The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Welcome Vince Redmond. He is an LMFT and a regular here on the show. For those of you who don't know, Vince has worked for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders for many years and started as a therapist, and now he's a big important licensed marriage and family therapist, and he is the director of CARD Family Services, which is an amazing resource for families that are in this intervention and need help and support of different kinds. So Vince joins us about once a month to talk with us about a specific topic. Thank you for coming and joining us again, Vince.
Always a pleasure.
And you and I spoke a little bit briefly yesterday, and we said we were going to talk about summer. And I know for some people they're like, summer, it just, it's May 2nd. But you were pointing out that sometimes when we can get a little bit ahead of things, it can actually, before it gets stressful, that it can actually reduce it. So what kinds of things should we be thinking about right now?
Well, and I know you and I made a good point when we spoke yesterday about, how schedules sometimes are inconsistent during the summer because camps are at different times, and sometimes it's, in the afternoon, sometimes in the morning, and families have often, left their schedules as open as possible for ABA treatment, which is understandable as well. However, this is the time to really meet with the supervisor, meet with your ABA, supervisor, start talking about what the plans are. What do they see from summer? What types of events, activities, and things would you guys agree upon to do for the summer, as well as, what resources and things are within your area? This is the time to plan because schedules are now being made for the summer. Schedules are starting to work out for the summer. And this is the time where we can do this before that crunch time comes and all the schedules are already set. And then we try to look into getting them into, different activities, events, and camps and so forth.
Yeah, I was really thinking about this last night, Vince, after we were talking about how there's a little bit of hopeful mind reading that goes on that isn't very productive. That the parents are thinking, oh, I hope we get a program that's this, and this. And the scheduler is like, oh, I'm hoping to get this child this much therapy during these hours, and I hope that the family is keeping themselves available for what I'm trying to do, and that just a little communication can make the likelihood that that success of getting what people want actually happens.
Absolutely. And like you and I spoke yesterday, I know for the kids that I still supervise, I've already started to talk to the families about what are the plans for the summer. What are they looking for the summer? Vacations, camps, different programs, those types of things. When would they like therapy? When can we, that kind of thing, because, their schedules are sometimes different, sometimes they're the same. And so the schedules might not change all too much from what we're doing now in the spring. But again, that communication now, and like you said earlier, while it kind of heightens our anxiety a little bit because we're already talking about summer and changes that are coming, when those changes actually come, we should be a lot less anxious and a lot more, knowledgeable of what we're going to do for the summer.
And just to clarify, because we talk a lot here about prioritizing your ABA hours, that doesn't mean that you can't do other things. It just means that if it comes down to, well, you can get therapy at this time, or you can take the Gymboree dance class, and you can't move the Gymboree dance class to another time, that you prioritize and do the ABA. But a lot of times if you plan ahead, you can say, well, we'd like to take this Gymboree dance class that only happens at this time. If that's the only time we can do therapy, we're not going to do it. But and then they can fit the puzzle pieces around, or they can say that's not going to conflict and go ahead and sign up for the Gymboree dance class.
Right. It's a lot easier to do it now. Like you're saying, moving those puzzle pieces around before the schedules are completed and finished, right? Because we can mark that time off and then look at another time, either morning, afternoon, another day, those kind of things to fulfill the ABA hours. It becomes much more difficult when the schedules are complete because they're complete for everyone. And as we know, that's a tapestry of therapists that are woven in and out of all different cases throughout the center. So to make a change at that point, now we're just not only disrupting their schedule, possibly many other family schedules as well. So if we do this in the beginning, we're able to have the best of both worlds, oftentimes where they're able to do those extracurricular events as well as, not jeopardize their ABA treatments at all.
Absolutely. Now, the asterisk also here is, though, that a lot of this, we don't want to send a message that parents can go and get their schedule locked and loaded right now, because a lot of places are getting the availability from the therapists because their schedules change in the summer too. Some of them have summer classes, some of them take vacation, some of them, are moving, doing whatever. So just know that you're starting the conversation right now, but not having an expectation that somebody is going to be able to give you a yes, this is what it will be right now, because it's all contingent on when the therapists are available. Is that right,
No,
Vince?
that's true. Very, very true. But the other thing is what we're looking at now is actually just starting to think of what are the options for the summer. What are some of the
Yes.
things we want them to do for the summer? We've spent our time so far talking about the scheduling of it, but it's also just as important just to look and see what do we want to do for the summer. Is it a swim class? Is it, like you're saying, Gymboree? Is it, maybe it's just a vacation? Maybe it's just, hey, we're going to be gone for this week, and so that we're able to talk to this, to the staff on how we can rearrange schedules so that your child doesn't lose any treatment, so that they're still able to maintain their level of treatment even with that, the summer vacation in between, and then aid support. Maybe they want to do a camp. Well, is aid support allowed? Can we provide aid support there? What's the need? So all of these things are great to work on now, so that when we're ready, June, whatever it is, 1st or June the 15th or whatever the date is in your office, there's already a skeleton of a plan in place. Now it's just a matter of making that happen.
Right. And I like to always think, because I'm a former teacher, and we will start talking very soon here on the show about the great summer slide. And this is not just about kids that are on the autism spectrum. In fact, quite to the contrary, teachers talk about the summer slide because it's what happens from the last day of school to the first day of school. Neurotypical kids will lose some of what they learned if it's not maintained over the summer. And this is horrifying to a teacher. We hate summer slide, but I will tell you, from an autism parent's perspective, it's something that you go, well, if the rest of the kids are going to slide back a little bit and my kid is making a whole lot more progress, we're going to get closer to caught up. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
and it can be a very exciting thing for an autism parent, of like, okay, maybe my child is in 5th grade, but their reading is at a 3rd grade level. And now they're going into 6th grade. So what can I do during the summer? And I think that's really how you got to look at it. Where are the gaps? Where is my child the most behind, or what can my child most benefit from? And then see what's available. And there's lots of options, aren't there, Vince?
Oh, there's tons of options. Lots of different, activities that they can get into socially. There's academic activities they can get into. We can even create schedules at home for things that they can work on outside of treatment, right? I think one of the biggest anxieties that I see with families going through the summer is there's a lot more unstructured time than what happens with children in school, right? They're home for that extra 30. If they're not going to ESY school, they're home for another 30 hours or so a week. So how do we fill that time? And some of it is we should fill that time with structured time, either it be working on their writing, working on their math, working on their reading, working on their, task taking, doing different academic worksheets and those types of things. That can be structured into their summer schedule so that they don't have that summer slide, that they are able to maintain the skills that they've learned, but also in treatment, they're going to continue to gain skills as well.
Yeah, and right about now, this time of year, often schools will have some sort of open house or
Yeah.
exhibit night or something like that. And one of my favorite things, and I think you were the one who taught me how to do this, Vince, is go to your child's open house and see all the wonderful work that they do, but then walk over to the classrooms for next year's classes. And meet the teachers and ask them, what are you working on next year, so that you can gauge, okay, he or she isn't good at that, gives you an idea of the kinds of things. So in the last hour, a parent had written in and talked about having an issue with money. When they were teaching her child money, that there was a problem with that. And I remember them telling us in the summer before, we're going to be doing money skills. And so we were able to go back to our card team and say, he's going to have to know money. And they worked on it all summer. So by the time we got to money skills, he had it all he was aces, because he had been prepped by the team. And we also asked the team, and they said, here are some things you can work on when we're not here, whatever it is, when money or otherwise.
Planning like that is fantastic. Just to know where they're going to be at the beginning of the school year. What are some of the tasks that they're going to be working on? It'd be money, it'd be cursive writing, it'd be reading nonfiction books, what have you, so that you can see where your individual child is with those skills. Now, if they're already doing well with them and you can maintain them over the summer, fantastic. If it's something that we need to prep for, you can work with your ABA team to prep for it so that they're aware of it. But the other good thing about doing that at open house is it's introducing you to the teachers and, talking about expectations and some of the accommodations that might be able to be done, so that the collaboration, the academic collaboration, can already begin even before the year starts.
Yeah, I hate it when I see parents begin to stress about this extra time. Because I think we need to flip that equation and think of it as a gift. But if we aren't prepared for it, if we don't have a plan, it's that whole thing, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. And that summer can be a time where you could enjoy yourself and get a lot accomplished. But let's talk about the enjoy yourself, because how do we tell parents, Vince, and this is something that always plagues me, how do you explain to a parent who doesn't have a teaching background how to take a summer activity like going to the beach, actually have fun, and take some of the lessons that you've been doing in a session and use them at the beach without the kid knowing? I see parents who are like, that's like a magic act. How do you do that? We know therapists know how to do that. Teachers tend to know how to do that. But how do we explain that to a parent who doesn't have that kind of background?
And I think you make sure it's part of the plan, right? And that's a very good point. I mean, part of the parent meetings and parent collaborations that occur on a monthly basis with the supervisor can talk about these things. You can plan for these things. So, for example, you're planning for the beach, right? You got to get your suntan lotion in your bathing suits and your chairs and your towels and so forth. But part of that plan should be, what are we going to do while we're there, right? It's not just go play in the sand castles and play in the water. It could be labeling. It could be asking for things. It could be just following basic commands, especially safety commands when you're out in public, right? Come here and don't go that far, and those types of things. Wait, it's very important to work on, waiting and safety compliance in those things, so that you have your mindset around what are the things, the tasks work on. Again, you're not going to work on a lot of things. It's vacation, it's fun, you're going to the beach, but there are a lot of things that you can do to generalize. And this is a good discussion to have with the supervisor prior to going on these types of trips, because they can really, more individualize with your child's program, and talk about the certain things that you can really generalize while you're there.
And what I'm getting overall is that not only do you have to start to plan and think about what you want to accomplish, but the communication is the cornerstone of all this. That then you need to communicate that to your team, to the people who are scheduling your therapy, and help them by giving them the information so that they can help you to plan. That's really what I'm hearing, Vince.
Absolutely. Again, it's the community, right?
Yes.
We're all there together to make sure that these types of things are not only successful, but can be fantastic learning opportunities for the kids.
Yeah.
Incidental learning is extremely important, right? Being able to generalize and use those skills that they've taught and they've learned in a therapeutic setting to be able to actually apply it in the real world when they need it, is fantastic. It's not only good for the child, of course, but it's good for the parents because they see what the effect, they see the success, they see a skill that the child now is growing into their own repertoire.
And this summer, I think you and I are going on a trip to Washington, D.C., if I'm not mistaken,
Trying.
for the Autism Society of America conference. And so
Right.
that will be very fun. And I know I usually travel and take my son with me because I believe in what was done to me, that somebody, I can talk to a parent forever and tell them, look, you need ABA for your child, but then and I will, and then I go, and here's my son. And that gets it done much faster. But I love to have my son with me, and I'm looking forward to going to Washington, D.C. and taking at least one day and turning it into an educational trip, talking about our government and visiting the buildings, because everything is educational. Every single moment of every single day is educational to all of us. I love to make it fun and interactive, and I'm not somebody who does a tour with a bus guide who says, look here. But that's my teacher training background, that when he was little, I would say, how many blue things can we count? So we'd work on, discerning what's blue and counting, and, everything
Sure.
can be a lesson every single moment.
Right.
So, or, now we'll look at social skills when we people watch and we'll watch a couple having coffee together, and we'll try to, just from what their physicality is, decide, are they friends? Are these people that are in love? Are these people that are angry at each other, just from watching what their bodies are doing?
Welcome back to Smarty. This month we're going to be making a mandala. Mandala, you ask? What's that? Well, in Sanskrit that means circle, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment. Okay, the materials you'll be needing for this project are colored paper, scissors, and glue. I'm assuming a lot of you guys have made paper snowflakes before. Well, this is the same idea, except for we're going to be doing it with A, lots of color, and then B, we're going to be layering it up. So, first step we're going to have to do is fold a piece of paper, so when we cut it out, there's going to be a repeating pattern on it. So what you're going to do is fold it in half, and then you're going to fold it in half again. Make sure your lines are super creased, okay? And you're going to keep doing this. You're going to keep folding it in half as many times as you can possibly fold your paper. So now that this is folded in half as many times as I physically can fold it, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut out the excess. So here's the paper with all the excess cut off. If I open it up, boom, it's a circle, but it's missing all the wonderful patterns in here that repeat. So let's fold it back up, and what we're going to do now is we're going to cut the shapes in it, kind of like a snowflake. So get creative here. Remember, don't go all the way through, or else you're going to just cut in half. So have fun with it. Okay, since my paper is, as you saw earlier, double-sided with different colors, I'm going to cut out the center part and I'm going to flip it. I know that sounds crazy, but you'll see what I mean in a second. Alright, so let's open this up and take a look at it. Ooh, so you see that? I've got a perfect circle with a repeating pattern. Exactly what I wanted. Alright, so I've cut out the center part that I cut out for my whole circle. And let's open it up. Look at that. It's another circle, but it's smaller. I'm going to take this and place this in the inside. So the basic idea of the mandala is you're going to take your construction paper, fold it like I just showed you, and then cut different sized triangles, which will turn into circles, so there'll be layers of colors with the pattern. And of course, while you're doing this, you can talk about colors and to have them work on their cutting skills. So now that I've cut out several snowflakes, I am going to start gluing them down on a piece of paper. Here's my mandala. It looks pretty finished, and it can be. But if you have an older kid and you really, really want to hone in on working on pattern making, you can take this little scrap pieces that you cut out and have them add to the pattern themselves. Well, I hope you and your child enjoyed this project and learned a lot from it. Until next time, guys, craft on.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Now, you have some specific questions today
Yes.
about scheduling.
And I get a lot of questions from parents, whether they're card parents or other parents, and I wanted to take a couple of specific things because when you start an early intervention, as both Nancy and I know, it is it's daunting, and you don't know what to expect. It's hard on the kids, it's hard on the family, it's hard on the house. It's it's just a full nothing.
It sends your whole life upside down.
Yeah, and you don't know which way is up, and you don't really know who to listen to. So I've got a mom who's asking specifically about a very young child who's not yet 3, but they've caught it early and they're so excited and they're getting services, good quality ABA services. And they're specialists. They got a prescription for 40 hours, which is what you want, right? This is like, woo, this is everything
they've got
that we want.
everything.
But the reality of it is very daunting. So he's 2.5. He's been used to taking a nap, but they want, in order to get the 40, they want to ramp him up to 35 this summer. And in order to get him to 35, the nap is really inconvenient, right? And when a child naps, insurance doesn't pay for napping.
Right.
So they can't really do that. So the mom either has to come to the center to be there or has to pay for babysitting because insurance isn't going to pay for therapy while a child is napping, right? But the truth is that they want to get the child sort of weaned off of the nap, have him sleep through the night so they can get as much done as possible. But this particular kiddo, just his hours are all upside down.
And this child is not sleeping through the night?
He's not sleeping through the night. He passes out when they put him in the car to leave the center. They can't get him woken back up. So he's ending up eating dinner at 9 o'clock. And then he's up for hours. Then he's exhausted in the morning, and he's even to the point where he's been so tired he's thrown up during ABA sessions. And mom is just beside herself, Vince. So help us to figure out what would be helpful for this mom, what would be helpful for this little boy, what would be helpful for the team, and dealing with all the emotions of this because it's really hard.
Right, and for sure. And for a 2.5-year-old, 3-year-old, naps are still developmentally appropriate. So we do need to look at what the child's developmental needs are. So the first thing that I would talk to or with the supervisor and the parent together is, how do we structure in nap time? How can we do that logistically? Because like you said, with funding and times and things of that nature. And how can we do that so that it helps his sleep patterns at night? I have a suspicion, I could be wrong, but that we're trying to fit everything into a Monday, Friday, or a limited time schedule to where this child is just trying to get too much done in a short amount of time. So I would definitely want to talk with the family about where is our schedule? Are we doing 7 days a week? Are we doing 5 days a week? What can we do to spread it out so that we have more time for his developmental needs, like his naps and things like that, so that he's not completely just falling apart at the end of the nights, which then, as you said, is rolling over into the middle of the night where he's not going to bed until midnight or later, as well as then he wakes up sluggish and cranky, and I'm sure he's not in the best position to go ahead and start treatment, the next morning. So I guess a long story short to the question is, I think naps at 2.5, 3-year-olds is developmentally appropriate. And I think there needs to be some scheduling done with the clinical team and the family to find out what's best for everyone.
I think that's absolutely right, Vince. And here's the thing, though, that I think is really hard is that when you come from a background where you don't understand ABA and you've never done ABA, the rational choice is, well, we'll just cut back the hours, right? Isn't that the go-to that we go to as parents? And then having to explain to mom, that's not the right thing in this circumstance. You're going to have to rearrange some other things and pull some strings other places. You don't want to lessen the hours. But it's hard because in the world of rational thought and before you came to autism, the right choice, and this is one of the reasons why I especially love you, Vince, is I've said many times on this show before that when I was having anxiety and issues because of ABA and some of the things that were going on, I went to an LMFT and she said to me, she goes, well, it sounds like that ABA thing you're doing is really the thing that's causing you stress. I would stop that. That was her advice to me.
Really?
That was really,
Yeah.
and I was like, what? That's not helpful to me at all. Because if you don't understand what ABA is going to do
Right.
and how it works,
Mhm.
it is the rational choice.
Mhm.
So it's, I guess, Vince, it's how do we help mom to understand that you're going to have to prioritize things in a different way and look at this with different eyes?
Right. And I think that some of that goes back to just understanding the success of treatment, right? ABA and discrete trial training is all based on the predicate of repetition and exposure, right? So the more repetition, the more exposure do they have to the lessons and the learning methods that we're teaching them, the more success and skill building that the child's going to get. The less we do of that, the less they're going to learn, right? The time in which they're going to learn is going to take a lot longer than if they get the treatment that's being clinically recommended. And there's no doubt that there sometimes needs to be a workup to that hours. And I know you had mentioned that in the beginning, and it sounds like there is a plan to, slowly work up the hours to the 35. However, I think you're spot on in the fact that reducing the hours really is reducing the effectiveness of the treatment. It's reducing the effectiveness of the child's progress. And what we need to do is look at either the other treatments or other therapies, other commitments, other priorities that are going on, and how do we work with those so that we can continue to work the treatment at the clinically recommended hours, or at least work up to the treatment at the clinically recommended hours, but also making sure that the child's getting his developmental needs, which would be naps and sleep
Yes.
and
It also, yeah,
snacks.
it also sounds to me like this family needs to put into place some sort of plan to get their child to bed earlier.
Well, but what's happening is that
He sleeps
now
too late.
they leave the center at
Right.
5 o'clock,
Right.
and they have a half an hour drive to get home.
Okay.
And he falls asleep in the car,
Right.
which I can really massively relate to. I couldn't go anywhere at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because Jem would just go to sleep, and I could hold him upside down and shake him by his feet, and he wouldn't have woken up. There's no way he would wake up because they're tired at that point.
Right.
So she comes home and she can't get him to wake back up
Okay.
to eat dinner, and then he wakes up to eat dinner at 9, and then they're all kerfooed.
Right.
And she feels, and I think understandably, she feels like she's behind the 8 ball, and all these people are saying different things to her, and she's like, I just don't want my child to be throwing up.
Right.
I just want my child to not be throwing up, which I agree is important. The child has to get sleep, and the child can't be throwing up.
As we promised, Vince Redmond, who is going to help us work through the maze of summer scheduling and the stress it causes. Hi, Vince. How are you?
Hi. Good. How's everyone?
There
Good.
you are. I just want to say, because Vince is so particularly fabulous, I want to remind everybody, if you haven't seen him before, that Vince began his career as a therapist, working in the field with kiddos that were on the autism spectrum, and he did that for multiple decades, and is now a licensed marriage and family therapist, helping all of us to understand all the feelings and the challenges that go along with. He's uniquely qualified to be able to do that, because having been on the other side of the equation. So Vince, we welcome you back, and we apologize to you because it's been several months since we've had you on the show, and that's all our fault and none of yours. But we've missed you.
I did give one up for you.
You did.
I'll give that one to Corey.
That you did when we had Corey
Right,
Feldman
that's
on.
right,
We were going to
we
have
had
Vince on, and Vince said, I think I have a feeling, because Vince sees things that we don't.
Right.
And Vince wrote to me and he said, I have a feeling you have other things to do that morning. Can you imagine, looking back, if we had still tried to do the full LTA?
No.
Vince, you may have
That was a
saved us
crazy
all
day.
from
Yeah.
sanity.
So-
Insanity. But anyway, we don't want to take any more of your time talking about that. You're just a great guy and always willing to take one for the team. So talk to us about summer, because everybody has been stressed, and it's from lots of different things, whether their schedule got changed, whether they got therapists coming or going, whether it's figuring out what their child is doing when they're not in therapy. It's for some reason this time it has felt worse for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of multiple things. I mean, the first thing is summer, and we know that change, is just a natural progression when it comes into summer. And anytime there's change, just us as human beings, anyone gets nervous, they get anxious with change. Even though it could be positive change, we still just have this innate ability to get anxious about change. Then when we add change that involves things that we have no control over, loss of set therapist, maybe a switch of an office, maybe there's some problems with funding sources, what have you, then that becomes even more anxiety producing because it's out of our control. And I know a lot of families, we're already anxious enough. There's already a lot of unpredictability in their lives. And when these types of changes come up, it just adds to it. So what we really propose is, working together, communicating, really being open with each other, the provider to family and family to provider on, what are their anxieties, what are their fears, what are their concerns, what are their frustrations, so that everyone understands what's under control either through the family or control through the vendor, on what we can do to make that change, a little more palatable for everyone.
What about our kids? How can we make the change more palatable for them? They get out of school, and depending, of course, on the individual situation, some of them might be in summer school, extended school year. Some of them might be going to camps. Then they also have therapy. How can we set them up if they're particularly anxious about change?
And you kind of hit on it a little bit. It's establish a routine for them, right? It's a new routine, but you do want to establish a routine, either if it is going to camp 3, 4, 5 days a week, is it summer school where they're going to school from 9 to 12. Try to establish some type of scheduled routine for them. I know depending on level of comfort, anxiety, and functionality of the child, you can have schedules. Either it be a visual schedule, it could be just a regular schedule, it could be something of just a routine schedule that the kids are involved in, where they go to school, they come home, then they have play dates, then they have maybe a little screen time, have snacks, what have you, or they go to camp. If we need visual schedules, the whole idea though is try to establish some type of a routine so that the kids have something to predict. This will lower their anxieties. Our kids have a very difficult time predicting the future. They have a hard time understanding what's going to come next. The more we can make that routine for them, even though it's a different routine than the spring, right, when they're in school, it will establish lower anxiety and probably better results.
And then there's also the vacations, which can cause stress because of travel stress, right?
Mm-hmm. True. And again, depending on the level of child, we want to talk to the child about this ahead of time, right? Again, establish it in the schedule. Talk about it. Let's not wait till the last minute and say, okay, let's start packing. Hey, guess what? We're going to Disney World. That's way too much to process, way too much to understand. And our kids are they need those comforts. They need those, they're creatures of habit, right? They need those routines. So we have to start giving them time to process what's going to change. So if there's a vacation coming, we should start talking about it immediately as summer starts. Just on July 4th, we're going to go to Disney World. We're going to take a plane, and just continue to talk about it so that when the date arrives, the child's not going to be surprised. They're not going to be scared. They still might be a little anxious, but now it's a little bit more, appropriate, and they'll be able to cope with it a lot better.
My son gets particularly anxious about traveling on planes now. He used to not, but it's something that's come up in the last couple of years. He doesn't like long flights. How could I help with that situation?
Do any of us like long flights?
No, you're right. And do any of us like airports these days?
No.
I'm sitting here thinking, because I do a lot of travel as well. I'm like, I don't like it either. I think the biggest thing that we could do with our kids is finding out where their anxieties are coming from. Is it just that they're bored and this is, they're kind of caught in a capsule and they just have nothing to do? Is it noise? Is there a lot of sensitivity to the loud noises of being in an airport, hearing the planes, those kind of things? And then we can come up with solutions on how to do it. The noise deafening earphones work great for a lot of kids. Making sure that we have I would say a plethora of different things that they could do while they're on the plane, not just one thing. I think a lot of times we get very focused on, oh, just give them the iPad, they'll watch movies. That might last an hour or two, but if you're going by coastal, that there's 3 more hours that we need to fill time. So bringing multiple things that they would enjoy, multiple things that would keep them occupied, so that we can continue to change things up so that their interest stays on different tasks and less about being on a plane. I know the best advice I ever got as a parent myself was when I had a very young child, was taking her on a plane. And the advice to me was go to the 99-cent store, spend $20 and just get, 20 or more different little cheap little toys and things that they would be interested in. Put them in a bag, and every hour they could reach in and pick something new. And it worked like a charm, because it was just like this treasure chest of unknown happy gifts, and every time they got something they played with it, and she was occupied for a good amount of time, and then we built in the music and videos and snacks and that kind of stuff as well. So keeping them occupied is essential.
I agree. I think that's a great idea. I want to talk a little bit about resentment.
Okay.
That I think part of what I've seen and that I've experienced is that summer for most of us is this, idyllic time. We have a perfect memory of a summer, and everybody goes, oh, it's summer, and I'm going to go on this vacation, and I'm going to go to Disneyland. And I can hear the autism mom that goes, oh, that must be nice for you.
Right.
I can't even go to Disneyland, whether it's money because of autism or because I can't get my kid to behave. And we get into this comparison thing of, you don't understand how different my life is from yours.
I think that's so true. And
and
I
you
have
get-
to I have to admit feeling resentment sometimes when I look at other families.
And in the past, I still sometimes do, about, people who are able to give, the experience of going to 7 camps and paying thousands of dollars for them.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, well, that must be nice, But I think we all do it to some extent. And I
yes,
think
the
we do it.
comparison thing.
And I think we do it more as autism parents. And I think for some reason, the summer, with all the changes that come, it tends to really rear its ugly head. So Vince, what do we do for resentment? What's productive?
Take a deep breath. There's our first step, right? Deep breath. I think is part of what you're saying is very natural. We always compare ourselves to other people. I mean, just as humans we do, right? She's better looking, he's taller, he weighs less than I do, whatever it may be. And then us as parents, we do the same thing when we look at our children. We look at our abilities to enjoy the family, and that's what we want to focus on, and that's what you guys want to focus on. Any family that's going on a vacation, it's not about the destination, it's about the memories, the enjoyment, the desires that we're having. And if it's just spending time at a park, or it's spending a weekend at the beach, or it's something that could just we're going to go to a new place in our general vicinities once a week, to maybe a museum, or maybe a different restaurant or a different park or what have you. So that, again, it's looking at the enjoyment, it's focusing on the enjoyment, it's focusing on everybody being able to have a good time, not comparing good time to good time, because when it comes down to it, joy and happiness and enjoyment are all something that you can feel in love and in experience with your family, no matter where you go.
So get in the moment is what I'm hearing you say. Think about what you can do versus what you can't do or what somebody else is doing. Focus on what you can do and actually do something, but get in the present.
And something to make you happy, right? Just going to Florida is not the only thing that makes you happy. Right?
There have been plenty of times that I look back on a memory and I was fatoutsed at the time, and my pants didn't fit right, or I didn't like the way my hair was or whatever in the moment, and I was crabby. But later on I look back and I go, that was a great time.
Right.
Why can't this be like that? I have a very hard time being in the moment, which is why we do the mindfulness thing on Thursdays. But looking for the joy wherever we can find it is what I'm hearing from you, Vince.
Yeah, and then creating some of it too. Just because we have more constraints because we have treatment and therapies and other things that the kids can do, doesn't mean we can't plan activities. Doesn't mean we can't plan vacations. It's just doing it obviously within our means, but also within what's going to make everyone, where are we going to get the most enjoyment out of it, right? Going on a plane might be actually the worst thing to do because it's going to create a lot of anxiety, fear, and panic. Maybe it's just a car ride. Maybe it is going to the beach more often. There's lots of things that each individual family can do that, if planned out, can be extremely successful.
And what about reaching out to our team and asking for help if there's something like a plane ride that's coming up, and saying to them, what can we do? Because the team can help with that, can't they?
Absolutely. The team wants to help with that. Again, the parents are part of the team, right? Everyone's a team member on the team. So we want the parents and the supervisor to discuss this ahead of time, again, to problem solve, come up with an action plan on what's going to be the best result to decrease any anxieties that the child might have and to decrease the anxieties that the family might have. And to do this ahead of time, I think is essential, because then we're going to get a lot of advice, be able to plan accordingly, be able to utilize that advice so that when it actually is time, everything can be applied, and hopefully, everything will be successful.
And we've only got a little less than a minute left, Vince, but if you could really quickly address for people, this is the time of year where the schedule changed for a lot of people getting ABA because the therapist schedules changed. And as you said, some people are having their offices moved and things, and that brings up a lot of anxiety. What can you give for those people to hang on to when that happens?
I think the essential thing, and I know we're working on it on our end as well, is the communication with the families. A lot of times there's things and there's changes that are outside of our control. Either a therapist leaves, they change their availability, they limit where they can work, those types of things. And so it's much more difficult for us to always be able to give what families' requests are, either it be about a certain therapist, certain time frames, and so forth. So we do our very best to adhere to what families are asking for. However, there are a lot of things that also come up in the families' situations that are not under their control. Maybe there's therapies that change, other therapies that change, or summer school that changes. So working together, really staying communicative, I think is essential. I know our offices are working hard to do that, as well as I know a lot of the families are, but as long as we're communicating, being transparent and open with each other, I think that reduces frustrations.
Yeah, and it's not always going to go right, and it's not always going to go smoothly, but I
Right.
wish if there was one gift that I could give everyone, it would be the front-loaded knowledge that it's all going to be okay in the end. I wish I could go back in time and tell the mom that I was in the first year of therapy, it's all going to be okay.
Right.
Worry less about every little change. Keep focusing on the big picture. Keep swimming. Don't keep getting upset about all these little things that you feel like you're totally justified being upset about, but in the end don't really add up to a hill of beans. But
That's
it's
true.
anxiety.
It's true. It's extra anxiety that we're all feeling, that I think it's hurting ourselves more than anything else.
It's hard to know. It's like that book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff.
Yeah.
But when you're an autism parent, you don't know what the small stuff
No,
is.
everything seems big.
It all seems big.
Yeah.
Seems big. And that's where we have that step back. I mean, we have the years of experience where we can look back and see that it is okay, that things will work out, that, because we lost our favorite therapist doesn't mean that, our child isn't going to continue to progress.
Yeah.
And it's true, because they're living in the here and now. I mean, they're living in, any change could potentially, in their eyes be detrimental. And being able to talk about that, being able to express that, and that's what one thing I would ask the families is to express those concerns, express those fears. I'm afraid that ... So then this way the clinicians and the administrators really understand where everyone's coming from.
Vince, as always, you are a breath of fresh air and help us to get on an even keel. We appreciate you so much. Take just a second here to tell folks what services you provide at CARD and how they can get a hold of you.
They can get a hold of me at any time at my email address, and I don't know if they're going to pop it up there, but it's v.redmond, REDMOND, at centerforautism.com. And we provide, again, counseling services for families. We, just consultations with families. We provide resources for families. Again, discussing with families any concerns that they might have in regards to care and treatment. So really, we're there as a resource and services for all the families throughout the organization.
I was talking about school.
And I didn't quite have a voice in my. I could
Yeah,
hear it very
sorry.
faintly. So anyway, we're back, and we have Vince Redmond
Yes.
with us.
Hi, Vince.
And we're thrilled. As I said before, Vince is an amazing individual, licensed marriage and family therapist, but also someone who did therapy for many years. He's got so much experience in this field, so there's nobody that understands more the things that a family is going through when we're dealing with autism, when we're trying to do early intensive behavioral intervention, when we're trying to do intervention later. Vince gets it. And I just want to say a little programming note that we haven't had Vince on the show for the last 2 months, and it wasn't Vince's fault. It was my fault. You want to talk about EF problems. That a thing didn't get transferred from one thing to an Outlook because I switched phones, and 2 months in a row, poor Vince sat there and I forgot him. So I have apologized
All right.
profusely. And
50 lashes with a wet noodle.
no kidding. And Vince has been such a sweetheart about it and not asked for me to go to the guillotine.
Yeah.
But we adore Vince and we're glad that he's stuck with my EF issues. So, Vince,
Hello.
welcome back. And
Thanks.
from
I'm happy to be back.
we're happy to have you back too. And we wanted to talk to you today specifically about friendship because it's such a complicated thing. How you get a friend, how you keep a friend, what constitutes a friend. And I've been saying to Nancy that I think it's really important that we as adults understand that because we are role models and we're the ones that are on the front line of explaining this to our kids, and it's dicey. And I had said to you a couple of weeks ago that it was when my son was learning the levels of friendship lesson that's in skills, that I was going through a difficult thing with someone that I considered a friend, that I considered a close friend. And it was while a therapist was explaining what a friend is that I had the epiphany that this person was not my friend.
Yeah.
And all the emotion that goes with that. But I didn't learn that as a parent until I heard a therapist explaining it to my son. So I thought it would be worthwhile for all of us to talk a little bit about friendship.
And it can be it can be a painful topic as well for some of us autism parents because some of our children obviously have a real issue with making friends, and then when they make them, oftentimes those friendships can't continue. So what do you think is the most important lesson we teach our kids on the spectrum about friendship, Vince?
Well, and lots of important things. I mean, friendships really are, defined as two different people who have a shared interest in something, and then genuinely share an interest in each other's point of view. They, in each other's, preferences and things of that nature. And as you guys explained, a lot of times, a lot of friendships are not built on that foundation of what is needed. They're there for their own means or their own needs, or things are salient and temporary, and when their needs are met, then okay, well, you're not my friend anymore. I'm going to go bring in somebody else. And that's not the definition of a friend, right? Or a true friend. Now, again, in the technological age, the idea of friend is also, developing and evolving, where there's now a lot of virtual friends and friends that you meet online, friends that you talk to. But that connection is still there, right? That physiological connection of that genuine interest in the other person, genuine interest in what they're doing. And then usually there's common interests or shared ideas about different topics. And I think that's right there the hardest thing that's hard for our kids to understand due to difficulties understanding other people's perspectives is that a friendship is a give and take, right? As a yin and a yang. It's understanding and caring about what the other person thinks and wants and desires as they do to you. And as we know, oftentimes our kids are very egocentric, and it's about their needs being met and their perspectives being accepted. And that's where we start, right? We start with a shared interest that both of them like or engaged in, and then we build that reciprocation, we build that perspective taking from there.
Well, oftentimes we have the issue of our child not being on the same level of, say, we try often as parents to try and get as many neurotypical kids to play with our kids, but yet our kids may not be on that level, and they may start to do things like check out and do their own thing, or do things that are annoying to the neurotypical friend. How do you deal with situations like that?
Well, I think obviously it varies, to some extent individually based on the child and based on the friend, as well. It's not just about our kids, it's about the friends as well. Where their level of tolerance, where is their level of education, where is their level of acceptance of change, acceptance of not getting their needs met, or compromises maybe not swaying their way. But the biggest thing that I think it's important when we're mixing the typical developing kids with our kids is doing a little front loading, doing a little bit of education with the friends, letting them know, not necessarily about the disability, but this is how things are going to be structured. These are the types of games that we're going to play. These are the types of things that we're trying to teach Wyatt or Jim or Sam or Nate. These are the things that we're going to work on today. So then the kids, are more, understand what's going to happen or what's going on, as well as being able to participate in possibly making it a true, not only friendship, but a true learning opportunity for our kids.
Well, and Vince, I want to switch it up a little bit because I think so often as autism parents, we're so desperate for our kids to have a friend that when they do get a friend, we feel, oh, this tremendous relief. And we want to keep that friendship going no matter what. And then we see that sometimes the way the other kiddo, neurotypical kid sometimes, is treating our kid is not acceptable.
Yeah.
And how do we get our kid to recognize that? And I'm wondering, where is the line that you go, okay, this kid, because I feel like I don't know, maybe you feel this way too, Nancy. Sometimes we have to cut kids some slack, and I feel like, well, they can be educated that that's not how you behave, but you run into things with the other parent, thinks it's acceptable behavior when clearly you feel like it's not. Where do we put the line, Vince, about what's acceptable behavior? Who do we say, well, we just can't be friends with anymore? Looks like teenagers, like on a daily basis, are like, you do this, I'm not friends with you anymore.
Right.
And then other times there are friends that you wish they would say, I can't be friends with you anymore, and they're still hanging on to that person.
Right.
Help me, Vince.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, though. I think there's both, right? In that we want to give a little bit of leniency to, kids are kids, teens are teens, and there's going to be some type of, a negative experience in a friendship, right? We all experience that, and we have to use those opportunities as learning opportunities for our kids. That friendships aren't just always rainbows and butterflies. There's going to be disagreements. There's going to be something, maybe some hurt words, or maybe there's going to be times where the other friend doesn't want to play with you or do the activity you want to do. And that's okay. That doesn't necessarily mean it ends the relationship. It means that we need to further understand where they're coming from, or we need to accept that this is something that they don't want to do. Now, giving that the slack and giving our kids that opportunity to learn, there are distinct lines when other kids are taking advantage of our kids, right? They're taking advantage of them for their electronics or their activities or their games, or, they just like to be around them because there's a lot of attention that's given to them. And I see that a lot, especially with the younger kids, because they see a lot of attention that's given to our kids. And we need to, like you said, first try to educate them on, as I had said earlier, what we're doing and what the purpose and the goal is, so that they can be good friends. But if they're not game and this is about their needs, then that's something that you don't want to be able to compete against. Right? You don't want to. We don't have enough time or resources to be able to compete against a friend who's really not being a friend. Those are probably friends that we need to set aside and possibly work on at a later time. We want, to be able to build those friendships, build those social skills, build those perspective taking skills with participants that are going to, that are going to be helpful.
What about when you have a dynamic with your child and their friend? I have a specific dynamic that Wyatt has with a kid that he has literally grown up with. And Wyatt likes to perseverate and say things over and over and over again and ask his friend, his best friend Sean, the same questions, which are very annoying. And Sean gives that a lot of attention. That's annoying. I told you I answered that. That's annoying. I told you I answered that question. Stop asking me that question. Stop asking me that question, which Wyatt then loves to ask the question. How would you deal with that situation?
Let's train Sean just like we would a sibling, right? Or another family member. We want to train him and say, when he does this, just ignore him.
Okay.
Don't answer him. He does this for attention, or he does this to get what he wants, or he does this for a replacement, phrase rather than using the other language to get what he wants. Let's train Sean. Let's tell him this is what you do when he does this. Give him directions, give him suggestions, give him things that he can do, so that it too will fall in line with the behavior intervention plans that we have for everybody else.
And my son is one of those kids that once he makes a friendship, he's in it for life. And if that kid moves away, or my son changed schools, he is literally heartbroken and wants to maintain the friendship. And sometimes that's not possible. What do you tell your child then?
Well, I think nowadays it is possible, right? I mean, nowadays with Skype and FaceTime and Facebook and emails, and right. I mean, we're now in an age where we can actually maintain friendships with people around the world. Now, it's different. They're not going to go out and play. They're not going to ride bikes and throw a ball around or do an art project together. But they can continue to communicate. They can be able to see each other. Now, if this is a friend and this is someone that we want to maintain the friendship, and it's someone that Wyatt can continue to talk to, then I would look at some of those other avenues. How could they maintain a level of friendship using the technologies that would be appropriate for him and his age?
Right. In this case, I mean, just this morning he asked me if I could find the number for a kid that he knew 4 years ago that I think moved to Florida. I don't even have a clue of how to track that kid down.
Right. And the first thing you want to do in this situation is talk to Wyatt. How did he come to mind? What made him think of this new friend?
Okay.
Is it something that he wants to do? Is there a game or a activity or a place that they went together that reminded him of him? There's a lot of context that you would want to try to check out and see, how did he come about? Maybe we can replicate it with current friends and friends that are close by. Or if you find out it's a genuine he popped in my head, I thought about it, I'm wondering what he's doing, then then possibly we can look at, trying to find an email or a phone number.
Right, from the old school. Maybe I can track that down. Okay.
Right, and if you can, great. And if you can't, have him be a part of the process. So then he can see that we don't have a number. We can't contact him. So then he has that experience of problem solving to try to maintain a friendship, but sometimes it's not possible.
Right.
Wonderful. I just realized what time it is, and we are heinously out of time.
Oh.
Which I know. Where did the hour go?
I don't know.
We were having so much fun. We didn't realize the time flew. But Vince, I really want to thank you for being with us and being such a wonderful resource. I want to take just a second to let our card families know what a resource you are. And do you want to take just like a half a minute to talk about some of the resources that are available for card parents with you and with your team?
Yeah, for card families, there's lots of different resources we have. Obviously, Autism Live is one of our biggest resources, but we have a lot of different resources and books and videos that we've made and movies we've produced. Lots of different things, training videos to help train things at home, counseling services in California and Virginia that are there to help families and family members, siblings, extended members for any different type of counseling needs. Lots of different things, because we're looking at the whole family. We're looking at treating, helping, and supporting the whole family through this journey, because as we've always said, autism is more of a family disorder than it is an individual disorder. And we want to make sure that we have wraparound types of services to help you guys. So if there's ever a need, ever a question, or any type of resource you're looking for, please drop me an email or call me at any time.
Yeah, I just want, because we don't often talk about that, because a lot of our audience, they're not card families. But
Right.
for those of you who are card families, I just wanted to let you know that Vince is there and has a team of people for card family services, and I'm just really amazed at what you have done with that, Vince. It was something that when we were going through card that I would always say, do you have something like therapy or somebody we can talk to about X, Y, or Z? So I'm just so thrilled that with the work that you have done, and I know what a difference it's making for so many families.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you.
And it's great having you on as usual, and we'll see you next month.
See you.